So today we're going to learn how to turn this
I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
into this,
I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
and then apply it to a project to make it sound like this.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
Alright, so now that you guys have heard that, let's get started on how we made that happen. The first thing you'll want to do is go into the description and download the pack that I have, which involves the 4 stem files that we're going to be working with today. The first thing we'll do is we'll bring in the Vocal Trop Dry 1, we'll place it in the second rack here. Dry 2 will go right after it, and we'll also put the instrumental in here as well. And before we get started, we'll also bring our BPM down to 118, because that's the speed of the song itself. So if we zoom in here, everything should be lined up accordingly. And the first thing we're going to do is just create a little bit of a quick fade in for our instrumental here. And to do this quickly, you can click on the top corner here and go Auto Automate, and then go Volume. And then we're just going to right click to create a point, and we're just going to make a quick up fade on the automation there. And we'll play that from the beginning.
I can feel your heartbeat.
So obviously so far we've done no processing on the vocals, and everything is just essentially its own stem without any effects. Obviously the instrumental has its bits on it. So what we'll do is we'll single out each into their own mixer channel. So I'm going to just double click to highlight one of the 3 clips here, open up our mixer, and we'll just link that first one in. And then we'll do the same with each of the 3 of our stems here, and you just need to make sure that at the end of each of these it's highlighted up and you link them individually. Once it's linked, it'll show which channel it's linked to here as well. So we're going to do a separate one for our second vocal stem, and then for our instrumental we'll give it its own channel as well. And you can see that they're linked to each channel on the left here. So let's get started on processing the first vocal. Once I bring that up, I like to single it out and then just start in a part in the track in which the vocal comes in, so right here.
I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel your heartbeat.
And we'll work from there. So I'm going to single that one out by right clicking here to turn all the other ones off and just have that track run. And the first thing we'll add in is a fruity compressor. Now once that's loaded up, we're going to work with this threshold adjustment, but first thing we'll do is we'll go to this top left corner. We'll go to presets and we'll just select leveler 1. It's just a basic leveling preset, just to sort of flatten out some of the volume peaks in the vocal. So if it's a little bit louder sung in a certain part, it'll sort of squish it together and give it a more even volume across the whole recording. So with that threshold we can bring it right down, so I'll show you what that does.
I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel your heartbeat.
So it's cutting out all the peaks, but we want to find a bit where it's lowering and evening out the volume a little bit, but not too much.
I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel your heartbeat.
So that's too much, so we sort of just want to allow the volume of that recording to be compressed a little bit.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Pretty happy with that section. Right after that, I add myself in a fruity parametric EQ2. And the first thing we're going to do is right click on the number 1 here, go Order, select Steep 8. Then we'll right click on the number 1 again and go to Type and then select High Pass. So basically what this is going to do is that when you're breathing onto mics, when you're singing, it'll give you sort of that low breath response that you don't want in your vocal. If there was no windsock on a mic, it would sort of blow up and that low end would light up on our spectrum here. So I can show you what this does. So this is what the vocal sounds like now.
I can feel your heartbeat.
And this is what this EQ is capable of doing.
I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel your heartbeat.
So all we're doing really, if we bring this all the way back, you can sort of hear a little bit of breath on the mic.
I can feel your heartbeat.
A little bit, so we're just going to take out a little bit of that low range here.
I can feel your heartbeat.
So I can sort of hear everything below 100 hertz.
On repeat.
And we'll also just level it a little
I
bit.
can feel your heartbeat, baby.
Cool. And then we're going to do the same on the top end, except we're going to do something a little bit different. So we're going to right click on a 7, go to order, select steep 8. I'm just going to drag that right to the bottom corner to give us an off shelf. And then we're going to work with a 5 and 6 to push a little bit more clear top frequencies on the top of our track for that recording. So play it back.
I can feel your heartbeat.
So with that, you'll hear,
I can feel your heartbeat.
and with, you'll hear.
I can feel your heartbeat.
So it's essentially just more crisp, clear, and there's none of that low sort of hit on the mic that's going to affect the instrumental of the track. The next step is to add in a fruity delay. And so we're going to use fruity delay 3 for this one. And basically, just follow what I'm doing inside this plugin. We're going to bring our input right down to, say, 15%. We're going to select ping pong for our delay model, and we'll pan all the way to the right or to the left, whatever you prefer. Our feedback will bring down to, say, 20%, and we're also going to mess with our high pass here. So this is a selection of a filter, so we're going to select HP for high pass, and then we're going to select the cutoff to be probably around 400 hertz, and you can see that rating on the top left there. Play this back.
I can feel your heartbeat.
And we're also going to change the time to go down to 3.
I can feel your heartbeat.
So that reverb sounds a bit like this.
I can.
So it bounces left and right, and that's a really cool sound. Next thing we're going to add in is our reverb 2. So that's a fruity reverb 2. And again, just follow what I'm doing in here. We're going to bring a high cut to about 12 kilohertz. Our damp 12 kilohertz. We'll bring our bass down to about 50%, and our low cut up to about 500 hertz. Our wet we'll bring to 30%. Just for now, we'll adjust that later. And our decay time we'll probably keep it about sort of 2.2 seconds or so. Say 2.5 seconds. And the last thing is the delay here. We're going to bring that delay up to about 127 milliseconds, something like that, something around 120. So play that back.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
It's sounding quite nice. And we're going to leave that there and go into the second layer, because essentially everything that we've got in here we're going to keep the same on the second layer. So if we just before we single out that second layer, we're going to right click on this channel here, go to File, Save Mixer Track State As, and I'm going to save this as Yano Vocal 1. Okay. Now if we go across and single out the second channel, we highlight it, right click, we go File, Open Mixer Track State, and we find Yano Vocal 1, or it should already be highlighted there, and you can just click Open. What that's going to do is going to clone what you had on this channel rack and put it onto the next one that you selected. And from here we can add our next parts. So if we play this back already.
I can feel your heartbeat.
So this is me singing at an octave which I'm not so comfortable with, but because it's a layer it doesn't have to be perfect. But it is quite a quiet layer. So what we're going to do first is go to slot 5 and we're going to add a limiter. And we're going to push this limiter to the top of the channel rack. Now you can do that by hovering your mouse over that effect and using the scroll wheel to push it up in the rack. Because inside FL Studio it processes one after the other. So it'll do the limiter, then it will compress, then it will use the EQ, then it will delay, and then it will reverb. And whatever way they are in the line will depend on how it'll affect your sound. So for the limiter, we'll bring up the volume until we can hear that it's getting affected by the compressor.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat.
So say about 12 decibels of gain boost on there. And then together with the top one you'll hear,
I can feel your heartbeat.
And now we can bring the volume down on the second channel to make it more of a background sound.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
So now with that,
I can feel your heartbeat.
a little bit louder actually.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Now with the second layer, because we have two layers here, this is your main focus layer.
I can feel your heartbeat.
And then the second layer is your sort of surround filling area. And what we want to use with that is to stereoize it and give it some stereo dynamics. So to do that, we go to slot 6 here and we add in a Fruity Stereo Shaper. And the selection we're going to use is presets and either stereoize 2 or 3. I quite like 2. And before we go ahead and play that, we're going to push this up in the channel rack so that it is before our reverb and our delay. So hovering the mouse over, using the scroll wheel, we push it up in the rack there. The reason for this is that it's going to stereo the sound of the vocal first, and then it's going to process my delay and reverb, whereas the other way around, it'll just try to stereo everything straight away, which will be a little bit ugly. So if we play this back now,
I can feel your heartbeat.
now if you're on headphones, you'll hear the difference. If you're playing out of a laptop or a phone speaker, you won't hear the difference here.
I can feel your heartbeat.
And now we can play this with the top layer.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
A little bit lower.
I can feel your heartbeat.
And we also want to add a little bit more influence of the effects in the second layer. So we open up our delay 3. We bring our feedback up to say 30% and our wet percentage up to 20%. So play that back.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Bit more on the wet.
I am listening on repeat.
30%. And the reverb.
I can feel your heartbeat.
50%.
Baby.
And our decay comes up to 4 seconds as well. So together.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
Cool, and if we play that together with the instrumental, this will be the sort of starting of mixing these in.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
So we can tell the instrumental is a little too quiet, so we'll just bump that up.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
So think about 12% boost. This is sitting at 112% on the volume. So there's one thing that's not quite fitting together, and that is the sort of the blend of the two together. Now the way that we can get rid of that is, well, making it blend better. As we play this back,
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
there's something a little bit missing when it comes to that top layer. So if we go and single out our main top layer here, there's an effect we're going to add in a slot 5, and it's called Vocodex. So we add that in, and we top left corner, it's going to select presets, and we're going to select backing voices. Now, bear in mind this is going to be a lot louder, and it is a little scary when you play it the first time, so my suggestion is before you start editing this, bring the volume down, and you'll know straight away. So we go to our vocal, and we have a listen to what that effect does.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Now that sounds ridiculous, so we're going to use this to our advantage. So in my vocal, I know that my high frequencies are really nice and clean, and this is like an EQ, so your bass is down here, and your treble is up here. So we bring this down, and we create sort of a nice swoop that will come in from the top. The vocal is going to be affected by these sort of backing voices more in the low area, rather than in the top area. And this is the wet adjustment for this effect too, so we'll bring that down to about a quarter, and we'll work from here.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Bring our volume back up.
I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
I'm going to make this a double curve, and we'll just have it go the other way a little bit.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Bring this top down.
I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
And this adjustment is just to make it sound a little bit more masculine, or a bit more feminine.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
And then paired with our second layer.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
And if we play everything from the beginning and make sure that all of our channels are highlighted, and we have a listen.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
So think with our vocodecks, we'll give it a little bit more top, and we're actually going to go back to a single curve and sweep it in like so. And have a listen again. Oh, but we'll do it with a solo on the vocals, because we want to listen to that perfectly first and then bring the instrumental back in.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby. I can feel your heartbeat.
Okay, so I've decided that I want to give it a bit more tops now, actually. And this particular area of the EQ is getting messed with by this vocodecks a bit too much. So a lows will drop off to about right at the end here, and we've just added another right cue point by right clicking, and we can also right click on them and delete that. So you sort of want to make it look a bit like this.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
Then with the backing vocal.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Now, once you're listening back to this, you'll think you don't really hear the difference. But if you turn the effect off and have a listen.
I can feel your heartbeat.
And then on.
I can feel your heartbeat.
Off.
I can feel your heartbeat. I can feel your heartbeat.
It sort of fattens up that vocal and gives it a bit more presence. So if we highlight all of these together again and start from the beginning, we hear.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat.
And the last piece is to push that vocodecks behind the effects first, not after.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
Okay, now we're going to move on to turning this part that's right before the drop that comes in, and we're going to turn that into something a little bit more exciting, as right now it just sounds like this. Let's make sure everything's running.
Baby.
Simple as that. So we're going to just highlight 4 bars here to cover that part of the vocal, and we're going to single out our main stem. Now this is one effect that I like to do quite often. If you go into your slot 6 here, this is the main vocal, and I add myself a fruity reverb 2, and this is going to be controlled on its own because it's different to the other reverb. So what we'll do is we're going to bring a high cut up to say 13 kilohertz, a little bit higher than the other one. Decay, we're going to bring right up to all the way to 20 seconds, so max. Low cut, like last time, around 400 or 500 hertz, and a bass down to 50%. Then we're also going to get our wet, we're going to push that up to 100%, and our dry is going to come down to 0. Just going to create a little automation clip for that first, and we'll push this up to 100%. That's what happens when it's at 100%. Now we don't want that, we want that to sort of come in a swoop. So what you're going to do is, like I have just done now, on the mix level for that, you right click and click create automation clip, and that'll create an automation in your playlist here. And then just follow what I've done here, create an automation at the start, and we're going to go to say 80% maybe, and then our 0.3 is going to come down with a bit of tension, like so. So if we listen back.
Baby.
So I'm going to bring this down a little bit to say about 65%, And this sweep up is going to be a little bit faster, so about 10% tension.
baby. Baby.
And then we're going to do the same with the second vocal. So we'll add our reverb 2 in, and we'll do exactly the same as last time. So 13 kilohertz, 13 kilohertz, a low cut 500 hertz, decay all the way up, bass 50%, wet 100%, dry all the way to 0. Then we right click on the mix level on this, go link to controller, and we just select that reverb 2 mix level. And make sure that this is not highlighted, it should not be highlighted, and then accept. So now both of them will do it.
Baby.
So that, with the instrumental, will create sort of a atmosphere, making the vocal sound like it's disappearing into space, and then the drop comes in. So all together.
Baby.
And I'm also going to overlap by just one beat. So bring that tension down a little bit, just so we get a little bit of overlap there. Now the next thing we're going to do is add in, it'll be in the download pack, and we're going to grab our vocal chop dry, drag and drop. And you'll notice that this one will have to link to a channel straight away and then single out because it starts abruptly. So we'll single that out. So this chop actually sounds like this. Cool. And it's got a really big build in here. So there's going to be some effects that we build on this before going ahead. So we're going to make a selection here from the 5 bars back from the drop. So that's when the vocal chops start coming in. We'll go into its mix it channel here. And the first thing we'll do is actually add the same effects as we have on the vocals. So that'll bring in those 4, and we have to work with the compressor first. Most things can stay the same on that, so I'm reasonably happy with that. We're just going to bring our delay input down to 10%. It's a little bit too much. Cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing with the reverb that we did on the previous ones. Now, one of the cheat things you can do here is go back to one of your reverbs that you've created, go to this top left corner, click Save Preset As, and if I go Reverb FX and save that in, I can close that, go to my next channel, add a reverb 2, and if I go down here, presets, reverb effects should be in here, and that'll be the same settings that we had before. So this one as well, we're going to create an automation clip. We're going to start it right up the top, and we're going to bring it down to say 10% right before the 1 bar before the drop, and then we're going to let the rest of it fade to 0. We're actually going to go to 21%, and we're going to create it sort of like a big down swoop like that. Now, this is going to sound a bit weird first, but let's have a listen. Actually going to bring this tension up a lot higher. Okay, so that's what we're going to go for, and now we're going to do a little bit of a trick. We're going to add in slot 6 a fruity free filter. There it is. And I'm going to go low pass, and I'm going to make this Q, which is our resonance. We're going to bring that right down. Frequency, we're going to bring all the way up. Right click it, then create an automation clip. Then we'll close that, and we'll add another fruity free filter. And this time we'll select high pass, bring that resonance right down, frequency all the way to 0, and then right click, create automation clip, and then close that out. So then you'll have these 2 empty frequencies here. Now we're going to follow a pretty similar type to the other one. So for the one that is the free filter, the frequency of the first automation clip, we're going to make come down 24%, starting at 100, and then the one below that starting at 0, coming up to about 80%. And from here, we can go all the way up to 100% on a nice quick slope up. And the other one's going to come down pretty fast after that. So this is what this is going to sound like now. Oh, my mistake. We've got to switch these around. Starting at 0, coming right up to the top, and then the other one starting at the top and coming right down to 0. Okay, play that back. Cool, so what we're doing here basically is we've got a high filter, so if we turn this one off, so it's starting low, building it up. I think I'm just going to go to 100% for both of these here actually, and just have them fill out. And then the other one is the high, so we turn that one on, that one off. That's what makes it sound like this. Put together. I think with our low frequency we'll bring that up a little bit quicker. And there's one thing that's missing is a sidechain on the drop. So to create the quick sidechain for our vocal chops, we're just going to highlight one beat. So this is a bar, so it's a quarter of that. We'll go into our mixer and we'll open a new slot right at the end. So after the effects, always after the effects, because I want the effects to bounce. Select Fruity Balance, right click the volume knob, go create automation clip. Then close that, and you can shape your automation clip from there. So I'm going to bring this right down to 0, and then I'm going to create a 65% tension to create a nice upsweep like so. And then from there, I'm just going to paste that all the way through and through for instead the last 4 bars. Okay, so that'll sound like this. Okay, so let's try it with all of the vocals and everything together, and we'll tweak from there. So I can tell it's quite quiet. The effects are really heavy, but it's quite quiet on its actual sound itself. So we're going to just go to slot 9 here, and we're going to add in a fruity limiter. Where are we? And again, like we did last time, we'll put that at the start. Our compressor, we're going to bring back to about 18 decibels, negative 18, and then we're going to push our limiter from there. So let's go to the drops. So that's the part it's quite quiet at. So where the effects are too much, first things first, I'm going to bring the sweep up a little bit on the high frequencies, and then a bit more as well on the low, just to let it come in a little bit earlier and not be a little bit too much. So that'll sound a bit more like this. So the next thing we want to do is take down obviously how much there is on that reverb. So to do that, we can just select our reverb here. We can either bring this down, a bit more, so we'll have a listen all together. Okay, so that essentially covers pretty much all of that build up there. So once we put everything together, we get this.
I can feel your heartbeat. I am listening on repeat. I can feel your heartbeat, baby.
And that essentially is how I mix in, well, how I have mixed on this particular song, my vocals themselves, and sort of creating a fun way to bring vocals out and in, and just using some techniques to create cool effects. And especially for remixes, this could be quite handy when you want to make that vocal be a bit more exciting. Whereas, you know, it kind of can just be a bit awkward with some remixes. Anyway, if you learned something in this tutorial, please do subscribe. It does help me out. And share this with anybody else who needs some tips on mixing and vocals and see if they can apply it. But yeah, we thank you very much for all the views and all the comments and likes and shares that you guys are doing for me. I do appreciate it. And bear in mind that mega tutorial is going to be coming out probably in the next couple months. And we're going to be doing a track complete from scratch. It will be in the pop genre, so we'll be focusing on using like basses, pianos, yeah, clean kick drums and stuff like that. A bit more like the dance pop sort of genre. Bit of funk in there as well, but it'll be a full track layer, and we're going to learn how to do everything from A to Z. So stay tuned for that, and we'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.